And then I started to do quote unquote like consumer trials. And by that, I mean my husband, my neighbors, my dad. And everyone was like, wait a second, this is really good. And my dad one day said, why don't you sell this? Or you have to share this with people. And he called it my hooch at the time. And yeah, that's kind of where the idea was like, I want to share this.
Welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses, and each week I talk with Olympians, pro athletes, TV stars, Grammy winners, best-selling authors, CEOs, and other high performers to uncover their success secrets. Every conversation is jam-packed with inspiration and actionable ideas we all can apply to our own lives, personally and professionally. Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the techniques, processes, and mindsets powering the world's most successful people. Let's go. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp. This week, my guest is Allison Ellsworth. Allison is the co-founder and chief brand officer of Poppi, the prebiotic soda brand revolutionizing soda for the next generation. Prior to starting Poppi, Allison spent 7 years on the road, working in the oil and gas industry. At the time, she was struggling with a variety of health issues and began to see certain benefits from drinking apple cider vinegar. But there was one problem. She hated the taste. So she set out on a journey to create a beverage that would provide her those same benefits and still taste great. Allison spent countless hours tinkering in her own kitchen and tested hundreds of different variations before arriving at a beverage she began sharing with friends and selling at local farmers markets. She pitched the brand on Shark Tank while 9 months pregnant and ultimately landed a deal which helped catapult Poppi to national distribution across the U.S. Allison pioneered the brand's digital-first approach and has built a loyal Poppi community on social media, including a TikTok account with over 2 billion views. Poppi has become Amazon's #1 selling soda brand and is beloved by millions, including celebrity fans like Kylie Jenner, Billie Eilish, Russell Westbrook, and Jennifer Lopez. My conversation with Allison is about so much more than a beverage. It's about self-belief and building something from the ground up. It's jam-packed with ideas we all can apply to our own lives, personally and professionally. I hope you take away as much from this one as I have. Oh, and one more thing. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Allison Ellsworth. Where I want to begin, I actually want to go back to your college days. So you began college with a brief stint as a dance major. I'm curious about that. Dance, is that something always interesting to you? Something you always aspire to? Talk to me about that.
It's so interesting. I think anyone can relate to this. When you do something really hardcore as a kid and your parents are behind, it's just this natural thing that you continue to do. And for me, it was something that I loved. But then I got to college and realized you don't need a degree to teach dance or to dance, right? And I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And I totally flipped out, freaked out, and dropped out of college for a year. Best thing that ever happened to me throughout all that. But I love that I was a dance major because obviously we'll get into this later, I'm sure, but Poppi is such like a digital first, TikTok first brand. So let's just say I'm not scared of dancing on the internet from time to time and being in front of the camera. So that works.
It is remarkable how something like that almost comes full circle. I thought about that in thinking about our conversation today, just what a role that TikTok has played in Poppi's growth. I couldn't help but think about the full circle moment there. So you take that year off. You said it was the best thing that ever happened to you. What were some of the biggest learnings personally for you during that year?
So I took the money that I had paid for my classes and dropped out, and I bought a one-way ticket to Spain. I did not go through the school. I did not go to learn Spanish. I went to just experience life. I traveled, I backpacked, I met people, I experienced what the world was outside of my bubble in Texas. And that's why I say that was one of the best things, because once I realized, well, one, I ran out of money and had to go home and was like, oh, hey, I should probably finish college. I rolled back into school and I still graduated in 4 years because now I had purpose of I want to get out and experience life and start living it. So I took Maymesters. I asked what was the quickest way to graduate, and I took summers and 21-hour semesters and graduated to just go experience life.
And it was a philosophy major that you ultimately settled on. Was that the
Sociology?
sociology?
Yeah,
Sociology. So what led to the decision to major in sociology when you came back to school?
I went to my counselor and I said, "What's the quickest way for me to get out of this school and with a degree?" And she said, "Well, all your credits are PE, by the way." Because I was a dance major. I was like, "Oh no, okay." And she goes, "But there's some stuff that you kind of took as fun in the sociology world that could kind of get you ahead." And I said, "Sign me up." Literally, it was that easy. And I don't even remember what I learned about in sociology, in all honesty. I feel like half the time I'm a street smarts girl. Half the time with all the stuff that I put into life, it's like I feel like I've learned it through living.
Learned it through living. That's such an important idea. I'm sure that's the one that we're going to come back to quite a bit. So after college, you worked 7 years in the oil and gas industry. You're on the road a lot. It's obviously like an experience, that whole period of your life that led you to build what's become Poppy. I am curious though. I'm always fascinated to dig into kind of those like early jobs that people have in their careers.
Yeah.
Like even if it doesn't fit with what you ultimately aspire to, I always feel like there are learnings, like for better or for worse. Like were there things that you particularly enjoyed during that period of your career that you felt like you wanted to build upon? And certainly were there things that you didn't like that you wanted to try and avoid going forward?
I think one of the biggest things that I learned, so I did work in oil and gas research. I was a landman and I would travel across the US and spend 6 months to a year in a teeny town. It could be 300 people or it could be 30,000 people, very small little towns in Utah and Wyoming, Colorado. And what I learned is I didn't have a boss. I was out there on my own. I had to learn to be a self starter, how to set timelines without someone telling you when to be or where to be, right? And that's a really valuable skill to learn. And then on top of it, I was the main person in the town dealing with the city council, the Indian reservations, the federal government. So learning to deal with a system, a corporate system, while trying to get something done. And it's almost like, I don't know, I don't want to get into politics, but it's almost like you have to go into the town and become part of the culture. And it's like, I think a lot of politicians do, in all honesty, when they're going around trying to get something done. But I just love it because I got to meet with really amazing people. I was invited into local people's families and houses and broke bread with them. And I just loved through all the experiences of hearing stories and learning how the land came about on their family 100 years ago and the history and the ancestry of it. So it goes back to like I've learned through living life and through experiences of what I've learned through other people. So I think when it came to starting a business, there wasn't as much fear, right? Because I wasn't leaving a big corporate job or a cubicle or a hierarchy org system, which and later in my career, it's a hard problem once Poppy scaled where we are. But at the beginning days, I had no fear. And that's really valuable as well.
Yeah, I can almost like visualize that period of time in your life where you talk about like those street smarts that you have. You alluded to us to politics there and how politicians go about their business, but I think about relationship building,
100%.
the ability to like find a way. I always find that really successful people in any craft have
Yeah.
this gritty determination to just find a way. They don't see it necessarily as like a wall. They see it as a hurdle that you can jump over. And I'm sure there were a lot of lessons that you learned that even if you didn't realize at that point, were going to serve you well through what you'd eventually start building here with Poppy.
Yeah. And to do right by people, right? There's a lot of projects that we'd go into. We would do the projects and then, you leave and afterwards keeping in touch with it. Like it's 100% relationship building and living and learning through that. I love that.
Now, the story of how you ultimately began to create what is now Poppy is well documented. You've told that story many, many times. I'm curious though, like when you think about like the early days, like and the word that comes to mind is like tinkering, like you start tinkering around to try and create like what was Mother Beverage and then became Poppy. What, like, take me like the first step, when you say, okay, I'm having these different health challenges and just different concerns. I want to be healthier. You go down this path with the apple cider vinegar. It tastes horrible by itself. And then you say like, I'm going to do something about it. Like, take me, like, what was the first step?
I love the way you framed it because it takes me to a different place, to a story that I probably never told before. But, I had just gotten married to my husband and the other co-founder. And I don't know, there was just something in me that wanted to learn how to cook and do these things. And I just became really passionate about being in the kitchen, whatever that looked like, from baking a cake for a birthday or making tacos, right? Whatever it was. So I think that there was like some passion there of just wanting to learn how to cook. I mean, I think anyone that's young, you go through college and you live life and you're traveling, you're doing all these things, and you either have a passion for cooking or you don't. And I'm good either way. But I remember when I was going through the process and I discovered apple cider vinegar and this like health journey I was on, there was nothing out there, right? I Googled and was trying to find things or buy things in the store. And so I was like, oh, well, I'm spending so much time in the kitchen. Why not just try it myself? And I feel like one of the first flavors that I made, which was raspberry rose. And I remember like it was yesterday, the raspberries simmering on the stove, trying to figure out how to work with this fruit. And then I had jars and I was infusing vinegars with it. And then I had like coffee filters and filtering, right? Like just totally tinkering. That's like a beautiful word to say, until I got to the point where I was like, this is good. This isn't really high sugar. Do you like this? And then I started to do quote unquote like consumer trials. And by that, I mean my husband, my neighbors, my dad. And everyone was like, wait a second, this is really good. And my dad one day said, why don't you sell this? Or you have to share this with people. And he called it my hooch at the time. And yeah, that's kind of where the idea was like, I want to share this.
If you had to take a guess, like how many tries, like how many different like turns of the dials in the kitchen did it take to get the one that you felt like tasted good? Like, was it a couple or was it hundreds?
Hundreds. And I also feel like months and months and months. Like people think like it happened over a 5-week period or something. But I mean, probably 2 to 5 months of on and off, not constantly, obviously daily, but just trying a lot of different things. Because I think what was really important for me was creating something that was healthy. So of course I could have just added orange juice or gotten juice concentrate from the grocery store and did it, but I wanted it to be really fresh. And then on top of it, the sugar content had to be low. So like what was that between like stevia and cane sugar is what our drinks are originally. I had never worked with stevia before. Like I didn't know. So I'm buying like packets at the grocery store. And then I learned, oh, wait, that's mixed with something. Try something else, and then you reach out to vendors. I think at one point I even used essential oils, like Young Living essential oils, because the edible ones. And then I was like, oh, that is gross. Like that is not good. Do not try that. So I don't know. It's kind of fun thinking back on those days, but we are very sophisticated now. For any that don't know, my husband runs the innovation team. We have a 5-person lab. We have PhD scientists on it with done a bunch of, research. So it's not in my kitchen anymore, even though those days are kind of where we got started.
So Allison, I'm curious. So like, let's talk about the kitchen to the farmers markets. So you go from kind of that kitchen phase where your consumer data and feedback is coming from your husband and your father and some neighbors and friends. Then you go to a farmer's market. You kind of expand the circle a little bit. What do you remember most about those days?
Ooh, the farmers market days, I just remember them being really hard. People always ask, like, could you do it again? I think I could do everything again, but that like period of being at the farmers market is where I get the pause. And just to paint a picture, it's really because I was pregnant when I started the business. So it put a lot onto my husband to do a lot of the bottling it, getting the tent put up, working it. It's hot. We were in Texas. It's like 110 degrees outside. And I just feel like throughout the whole process of it, we'd quit our jobs. We had no money. Right. And so he was getting a second job. We were borrowing money from family. We were maxing out our credit cards. It's that typical entrepreneur where you're like, wow, that was a grind. Like, I don't know if I have that in me again type of situation. But I do think it built the grit and the passion for Poppy, and I wouldn't change it. So it's like you say, like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could do it again. But I think every entrepreneur that starts it goes through that or has a similar story. And looking back on it, I was just like, wow, that was really hard. But I was determined no matter what. You know what I mean? Like where something's hard, but you're going to do it anyways, just not to prove a point, but to prove to yourself that you could, which I think builds grit.
Were there moments at those farmers market in that phase, despite all the challenges and the grind as you described it, like were there moments where you either heard something from a customer or like you felt a particular energy that you think even maybe in retrospect propelled you or made it a little easier to deal with that grind?
Oh, easily it was the moment that we were discovered by Whole Foods. They came by our booth and they were like, hey, there's literally nothing like this in the grocery store. And, this was quite a while ago before, kombucha was kind of becoming a thing. And, at that point, it was just like soda, sparkling water was this was like back in the day, there wasn't a lot of functional drinks or better for you products in the beverage space. And she was like, there's nothing like this. You have to be in it. And just getting like little affirmations of that along the way. And then we tried out for Shark Tank pretty early on. And the producers really early on were like, this is amazing. You guys are going to make it the whole way. So even when it was like really hard, but with that said, we were running out of money. And you forget about the times that there was probably 100 no's to the 4 yeses. And you kind of forget about the no's and just remember the yeses. But we were raising money and we couldn't get anyone to invest other than like my sister and my dad, right? Like nobody really like, you want to make a vinegar drink? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're crazy, but I don't think of those times as much. You just remember the good. So, but once again, it just builds grit to kind of get you to the next level.
What helped? I mean, I'm a huge believer that like you've got in anything, you've got to hear a lot of no's. You've got to fall down 1,000 times. And it not only makes the success like feel like more enjoyable, but it's almost what gets you to the success. I mean, one of the common through lines through so many of the conversations that I've had with Olympians who've won combined dozens and dozens of gold medals is that like they just wish people saw how many times they failed, how many times they didn't want to practice the program or show up to the field, on a particular day, and that it is this journey with so many ups and downs. I'm curious, when you think about it now, like was there something that enabled you to break through the no? I mean, like 4 yeses and 100 no's, that's a challenging road. What do you think it was that enabled you to kind of put the no's aside? Do you think it was just being naive, that entrepreneurial grit? Like, was it something deep inside you? Like, what enabled you to just put the no's aside and really focus on the yeses?
I think it's a few things. I was obsessed with this product that I had created because it helped me. I didn't start this business to get rich. So I think your goals and your motivation can also dictate just like the way that you feel and like your grit going forward. So for me, I wanted everyone. I was obsessed with everybody trying this product because they had to. I can't explain it. They had to, right? And so I think when you have that type of a mentality of like, I love this product and I want to share it with the world is really powerful. And I am stubborn. I'm a stubborn human being. I don't like to admit when I'm wrong. I don't like to fail. So I think there's like a little bit of piece of that of if I set my mind to it, I'm going to make it happen. And it's till this day, you could look at it as a good thing or a bad thing within Poppy. But I tend to get yeses when I hear no's 100 times. But I just think that ability and passion, and it always comes down to passion, I think, with entrepreneurs and finding your way.
I think that you described there, like that purpose and the passion, the self-belief, not only just the self-belief, but like the belief in the product and the platform that you were going to build is such a powerful fuel because, like you said, you got into this for the right reasons and you believed in like deep down in your soul that like this was good for people and that this could make a difference and this could change as it has in many ways. It's changing an entire industry. All right, everyone. We'll get back to the conversation momentarily. But first, I want to tell you about my free weekly email newsletter, Tarp Pullers. Each week, I share an uplifting and inspirational tarp pulling story that is sure to brighten your day. And I also highlight some of the most powerful ideas I've learned on my journey talking to 200 and counting of the world's top performers. The newsletter is short, concise, and a reader recently told me this. She said it makes her day every time it hits her inbox. Go to everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter to sign up today. I want to fast forward a little bit. I'm always curious, like when you go from the entrepreneurial, like where you're like setting up the tents and you're doing all this stuff and you're tinkering in the kitchen then to like a real business that's starting to scale. That is like that's like two very different worlds. And you've done this fantastic job of, it would seem to me, you've done this fantastic job of maintaining the culture, maintaining like the core ethos and like the brand and the way people feel when they kind of interact with your brand. Like, what were some of were there challenges early on in terms of making sure that with the explosive growth that you began to experience eventually, that you were able to kind of maintain some of those core principles that made you successful in that entrepreneur phase?
So I think just to like set it up as well, Poppy is potentially one of the fastest growing beverages in the history of beverage. We're the number one selling soda on Amazon. I have 2 billion views on TikTok. It's been 4 years of meteor, not mediocre.
Not mediocre.
No, like it's like insane growth, right? So
meteoric.
Thank you. Meteoric growth. And I don't think that any human being is capable of learning this from a previous job, right? Like this is just absolutely not normal. So there's 2 employees in March of 2020, me and my husband. We have over 200 4 years later. And I've had to learn how to be a leader. I'd never managed anyone before. I had to learn how to work in the sandbox with others and not just bulldoze. I had to learn how to let go of things that I really wouldn't let anyone else do and allow others to be better at that thing that I used to do always. Right. So I think for me, like the growth within my personal journey at Poppy has been really interesting. We decided pretty early on to bring in a CEO. So throughout all this growth, we've been part of that decision of who is in that sandbox with us, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs probably have a little bit more time, right? You don't grow as fast as you do with us in 4 years. Maybe you have 10 years to get there and you can kind of like slowly do it. We didn't have time to kind of learn that. So that's been a challenging, but I think great opportunity for growth for me as a human and my husband, I would say as well. But we brought a CEO, we brought a CMO, our team has grown. But the culture piece is the one piece I will say is at the heart of who Stephen and I are. So I still am very heavily involved in the culture and the community and who works with us and our team and all of these things. It's a really big passion of mine still. And so I think that keeps that within Poppy and people kind of see it and allow it and they support me in it, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. You said it so beautifully there. And it's in many ways that the company is growing up, like you're growing up as a leader too, like in parallel with the company, which is just so fascinating. This podcast is called Everybody Pulls the Tarp, and it's all based upon this experience that I had over 20 years ago. At the beginning of my career, I had an internship in minor league baseball, and many of my listeners have heard this story a number of times, but the gist of it is that I show up on the first day for this front office internship, and the team's president and general manager asks all of us interns to bring a pair of old clothes the next day to keep at the ballpark because we need to help the grounds crew pull the tarp on and off the field when it rains. And everybody was kind of confused, like, isn't that what a grounds crew is for? And they explained that, in the big leagues, they have like a lot bigger budget and a lot more personnel, and they have 25 to 30 people to pull the tarp on and off the field when it rains. And here we have 5 or 6. So everybody's going to have to pitch in, from the general manager and the president to the CMO to all the new interns and everybody in between. And then I did a whole host of other odd jobs that summer. I dressed as the mascot. I drove players to the airport. I inflated the moon bounce. I sold merchandise in the stands. I cleaned fireworks debris out of center field. I did like whatever was needed to be done. And ever since then, I've believed that the world's most successful companies, teams, communities are powered by people that I call tarp pullers, people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do whatever it takes. Now, there is no question that entrepreneurs have this predisposition to living that everybody pulls the tarp mindset, because like you said there, I mean, you're just doing everything. I mean, you go from the kitchen tinkering to setting up booths at farmers markets to scaling a company now where you're leading 200 people. Like, it's obviously important. I think when you live this everybody pulls the tarp mindset, you have to be willing to do anything. But as you alluded to there moments ago, when a company is scaling, you also have to be willing to delegate.
Yes.
And you just mentioned that was something that you've had to kind of figure out and fine tune that you're still working on maybe in many ways. How do you what's your framework? Like, how do you think about delegating? How do you find the right people for a role and to carry out like the mission that you and your husband have?
Yeah, I think work-life balance has never been a thing in my life until recently, because I finally got to the point where we're growing so quick. I'm holding the business back if I don't allow others to do their job and why we hired them, and to trust and empower. And once you can kind of like let that go, and then you see the company succeed, when you were sitting back, you're like, wow, like that's where the reward comes from, right? Whereas before it was actually doing the physical thing. Now it's, holy crap, the team did that without me. And like, it's actually better, right? But I had to learn that really quickly. And throughout that whole process of doing it, sometimes there's the old saying where you have to let them fail to let them succeed, right? There was failures. There was like, oh, I could have done it better, but they wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn if they wouldn't have failed. So that was like hard as for me as an entrepreneur to watch things that I was like, I could have, but then take a breath. It's okay. It's not the end of the world, right? And then knowing you're close enough and supporting your team that if they do not need that extra support, that I am there and I will step in, and I'm not going to let the company like go down some like crazy path. But I would say like I had to get like a coach through that experience. Like there's a lot of leadership coaches, there's groups, there's so many things that I think entrepreneurs should be more open about talking about, is like get help, learn what you don't know, and always be learning, right? I think that's a really big thing, is like I don't know everything, and I hope that I would be sad if I was done learning, right?
There is no question that that idea of like continuous learning and continuously challenging yourself to grow is something I am super passionate about. And I would say every single high performer that I've ever talked to feels the same way. Like you never feel like you have it all figured out. I had a conversation recently with a best-selling author who has had multiple best-selling books. She sold millions of copies of her books. 2 of her books have been made into Hallmark original movies. And she says, Andrew, I still have no idea what I'm doing. I never have it figured out. And in many ways, she says, when you turn the page on, when you kind of start writing a new book, it's kind of like you're starting from the beginning again. And I would imagine you feel the same way. Like maybe you're not starting from the beginning, but when you take on a new initiative, a new project, a new collaboration, there's that newness that
a new chapter
keeps you challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, from every chapters throughout where we started, from the farmers market to Shark Tank to now just our growth, it has been a chapter, and I feel like I've grown from each step, and it's built me to who I am. And that's why people are always like, if you could go back and tell yourself whatever, I'm like, I would just say don't change. Do you, and continue to like grow and be humble along the way. Because I think with success comes this like your shit doesn't stink mentality. And I don't think that's healthy either. So I stay really focused on Poppy. On people like, do you see what your competition's doing? Or do you see what this is doing? I'm like, no, because I'm focused on Poppy and its growth and staying humble and like getting our goals and doing these things. So the chapter now for us is just staying really focused. I want to continue to see the business double, triple. Our mission at Poppy is to revolutionize soda for the next generation. And it goes back to my passion of why I started this. And I truly feel like it's happening. And so to me, that's such like a more inspirational North Star than to not just focus on that.
I feel like in a way, I don't know, tell me if you agree or disagree, but like, I feel like for a variety of reasons, people have like this emotional connection with soda.
Yeah.
When I think of soda, I think of like family pizza nights and birthday parties and movies and baseball games and
oh my gosh,
movie theaters,
everything.
Yeah, like the big, like super expensive, ultra large soda with the big M&Ms at the movie theater. Like there's just something, but you've been able to like enter into that emotional space for people and change how they think about soda.
So I lead our creative and brand here at Poppy, and that's literally our brand positioning. So exactly what you said, soda has this emotional connection that is more than a drink. It is a connection, or it's a memory that you have. And basically our goal and at Poppy is we've given you the freedom to love soda again at its best. So without the excess sugar, without the baggage, it's fun, it's poppy, right? So we've given you that freedom to love soda again. And soda's now, it is kind of like a dirty word, right? We're trying to make it not again, right? So you can enjoy soda at the movies or with your friends or at a sports game. That's exactly why we exist, is to give you that freedom to love soda again. I love that you're like, you get that connection or you get what we're doing a little bit because it's true.
That idea of the emotional connection was coming to me as we were talking about it. And the way you
Yeah.
described it there, like soda's a bad word. Like soda had become a bad word. And you are all putting a dent into changing that. And maybe that's why the Super Bowl ad resonated with so deeply with so many and others. I am curious though, a lot of times when you start to have success, and you talked about all the reasons and reasons why you stay humble and how you stay humble and all those things. But I almost, when you have success, like taking risks become more costly, right? Like there's more to lose.
Yeah.
But it seems to me like you're still the same. I mean, you're still the same now that you were in those TikToks 4 years ago. And the company is still kind of taking shots on the net, taking big risks and making bold decisions. Like, how have you been able to maintain that? And how do you continue to maintain that willingness to continue to put yourself out there like that?
I think because it's kind of within the DNA and our culture at Poppy. So we ask a lot. We almost say like everyone at Poppy who works at Poppy is like this unicorn because you have to have the entrepreneurial spirit. You have to be digital first and you have to adapt to the Poppy way while bringing your expertise in, right? So when I say that is like digital first, for example, we get our entire company together for a national meeting in Austin, Texas every year. We had 200 people here back in September. In the agenda, we leave almost 45 minutes for the entire company to make TikToks together, right? So when our buyer for our, excuse me, like our national head of national accounts for Target or whatever, or Walmart, they're like going into these meetings. They're like, no, like they feel like they've been on our TikTok. They're part of it. They feel like they're part of the spirit. They're part of the culture. I think that like having that healthy culture helps us kind of keep that like non-corporate mentality. But we are highly sophisticated now. We have an entire BI team. We are constantly looking at data, our dashboards on dashboards on dashboards, right? But I think that like I always say like the 80-20 rule where it's like, okay, you need that process for 80, but then you have to leave that 20% for chaos, fun, disruptive, forward thinking. And everybody feels that within their bones at Poppy. It's definitely a charge me and my husband are doing and talking about, but like they feel it. And when you can create that, it keeps the brand young. It keeps us at the forward of disruptive. And you brought up Super Bowl, and I've told this story before, but just for example, we created a beautiful piece of content for our Super Bowl ad last year. We bought the Super Bowl 4 days before the Super Bowl. Literally the Wednesday or Thursday before the Sunday of Super Bowl. And it was because we're like, screw it. Let's take a chance. We love this creative. Go out there, find a Super Bowl. We found it on the secondary market and we bought it and we were like, rolled the dice and it massively paid off.
Most number one viewed Super Bowl this year.
Yep. Number one Super Bowl ad. It's crazy. So I think, but that had to been a team effort, right? Like I've never bought a Super Bowl ad. So I had to bring in our CMO. We had to bring in our CFO to make sure the finances were there. We got to bring in our CEO, right? So it's a core within the team that I think is a really big piece of allowing us to continue to stay that way.
You talked about, as we get ready to wrap up our conversation, I'm curious, like you mentioned earlier that it's almost, I think you had said you almost wouldn't, you asked when people say like, what would you do differently? Or like, you wouldn't do anything differently because that like doing what you do and what you did get you where you are. But let's reframe that a bit. Like, is there anything that you worried about a lot a couple of years ago or in those like early days of your career that you wish you hadn't spent so much time worrying about?
That's probably, I think, a normal behavior as an entrepreneur is that change, right? Like what you were saying, how do you guys keep it? It's that constant, I am on the mountain being like, we can't change, but we can do it with process. We can do it. Don't change, don't change, don't change. So that's something that still I think of daily, keeps me up at night. How do we, when you're cool, like the hottest new whatever, like people love to take you down and do these things, right? So it's this constant thing of like, how do we stay authentic to who we are? How do we not change but how do we grow up along the way is what kind of keeps me up at night. And that I'm constantly thinking about is why it probably is so easy for us to keep the culture and keep who we are.
Well, Allison, you are doing a fantastic job of it. There is no question you are a certified tarp puller.
Oh.
Everybody at Poppy is changing the game. It's been so much fun to dig into your story and the story of Poppy, and I wish you all the continued success. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with me this week, and cheers.
Cheers. Yay. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. We'll talk again soon. Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Instagram at AndrewMoses123 and sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Until next time, keep pulling the tarp.